Joseph James DeAngelo Jr., born November 8, 1945, is an American serial killer, serial rapist, burglar, peeping Tom, former police officer and mechanic who committed at least 13 murders, 51 rapes, and 120 burglaries across California between 1945 and 1974 and 1986. He is responsible for 3 known separate crime sprees throughout the state, each of which spawned a different nickname in the press before it became evident that they were committed by the same person. In the San Joaquin Valley, DeAngelo was known as the Visalia Ransacker from 1974 to 1976, before moving to the Sacramento area, where he became known as the East Area Rapist from 1976 to 1979, and was linked by modus operandi to additional attacks in Stockton, Modesto, and Contra Costa County. DeAngelo committed serial murders in Santa Barbara, Ventura, and Orange counties from 1979 to 1986, and was known as the Night Stalker, and later the original Night Stalker, in order to differentiate him from Richard Ramirez, a later serial killer who also became known as the Night Stalker. He is believed to have taunted and threatened both victims and police via obscene phone calls and possibly written communications. During the decades-long investigation, several suspects were cleared through DNA evidence, alibis, or other investigative methods. In 2001, the combined acronym AARONS came into use after DNA testing indicated that the East Area Rapist and the original Night Stalker were the same person. The case was a factor in the establishment of California's DNA database, which collects DNA from all accused and convicted felons in California, and has been called second only to Virginia's in effectiveness in solving cold cases. In an attempt to increase awareness, crime writer Michelle McNamara coined the name Golden State Killer in early 2013. On June 15, 2016, the Federal Bureau of Investigation, FBI, and local law enforcement agencies held a news conference to announce a renewed nationwide effort, offering a $50,000 reward for the Golden State Killer's capture. On April 24, 2018, California authorities charged 72-year-old DeAngelo with 8 counts of first-degree murder. Based upon DNA evidence, investigators had identified members of DeAngelo's family through forensic genetic genealogy. This was also the first announcement connecting the Visalia Ransacker crimes to DeAngelo. Owing to California's statute of limitations on pre-2017 rape cases, DeAngelo could not be charged with the rapes he had committed in the 1970s, but he was charged in August 2018 with 13 related kidnapping and abduction attempts. On June 29, 2020, DeAngelo pled guilty to multiple counts of murder and kidnapping. As part of a plea bargain that spared him the death penalty, DeAngelo also admitted to numerous crimes with which he had not been formally charged, including rapes. On August 21, 2020, DeAngelo was sentenced to life imprisonment without the possibility of parole. Joseph James DeAngelo Jr. was born on November 8, 1945, in Bath, New York, to Kathleen K. Louise DeGroat, June 30, 1923, August 21, 2010, and Joseph James DeAngelo Sr., January 19, 1920, February 15, 1995, a sergeant in the United States Army. He was of Italian ancestry and had 2 older sisters, Connie and Rebecca, and a younger brother, John. A relative reported that when DeAngelo was a young child, he witnessed the rape of Connie by 2 airmen in a warehouse in West Germany, where the family was stationed at the time. Following DeAngelo's conviction, Rebecca claimed that he was abused by their father while he was growing up. Between 1959 and 1960, DeAngelo attended Mills Junior High School in Rancho Cordova, California. Beginning in 1961, he attended Folsom High School, from which he received a GED certificate in 1964. He played on the school's junior varsity baseball team. Prosecutors reported that DeAngelo committed burglaries, mail theft, and tortured and killed animals during his teenage years. DeAngelo joined the United States Navy in September 1964 and served for 22 months during the Vietnam War as a damage control man in the cruiser USS Canberra. From May 1973 to August 1976, DeAngelo was a burglary unit police officer in Exeter, having relocated from Citrus Heights. He then served in Auburn from August 1976 to July 1979, when he was arrested for shoplifting a hammer and dog repellent. He was sentenced to 6 months of probation and fired that October. During the process of being fired, DeAngelo threatened to kill the chief of police and allegedly stalked the chief's house. In May 1970, DeAngelo became engaged to nursing student Bonnie Jean Colwell, a classmate at Sierra College, but she ended the relationship in 1971 after he became manipulative and abusive, culminating in his demand that she help him cheat on an abnormal psychology test. After the breakup, he attempted to force her to marry him by threatening her with a gun. In November 1973, he married Sharon Marie Huddle of Citrus Heights, and the wedding was held in Auburn. In 1980, they purchased a house in Citrus Heights, where he was eventually arrested decades later. Huddle became a divorce attorney in 1982, and they had 3 daughters. 2 were born in Sacramento, and 1 was born in Los Angeles. The couple separated in 1991. In July 2018, several months after DeAngelo's arrest, Huddle filed for a divorce, which was finalized the following year. DeAngelo committed most of the offenses while he was married and raising a family. Neither his wife nor his children ever suspected he was committing serious crimes. His eldest daughter claimed he was a perfect father, while his wife believed his excuses for being away from home. DeAngelo's brother-in-law claimed that DeAngelo would casually bring up the East Area rapist in conversation around the time of the original crimes. Neighbors also reported that he would frequently engage in loud, profane outbursts. One neighbor reported that his family received a phone message from DeAngelo threatening to deliver a load of death because of their barking dog. He was living with a daughter and granddaughter at the time of his arrest. DNA evidence linked DeAngelo to 8 murders in Goleta, Ventura, Dana Point, and Irvine. 2 other murders in Goleta, lacking DNA evidence, were linked by modus operandi. DeAngelo pleaded guilty to 3 other murders, 2 in Rancho Cordova and 1 in Visalia. He also committed more than 50 known rapes in the California counties of Sacramento, Contra Costa, Stanislaus, San Joaquin, Alameda, Santa Clara, and Yolo, and he was linked to hundreds of incidents of thefts, burglaries, vandalism, peeping, stalking, and prowling. On September 11, 1975, DeAngelo broke into the home of Claude Snelling, 45. Snelling, a journalism professor at the College of the Sequoias, had previously chased a prowler discovered under his 16-year-old daughter's bedroom window around 10 p.m. on February 5, 1975. On September 11th, he was awakened around 2 a.m. by strange noises. Upon leaving his bedroom, Snelling ran through the open back door and confronted a ski-masked intruder in his carport attempting to kidnap his daughter, who had been subdued with threats of being stabbed or shot. Snelling was then shot twice, staggered back into the house to his wife, and later died. After the shooting, the assailant punched and kicked the daughter, leaving her on the ground, and fled the scene. A stolen bicycle, tied to the assailant, was found nearby at 615 Redwood Street. After the murder, Beth Snelling, 16, underwent hypnosis in order to gather further details. The Visalia police also committed more resources to apprehending the ransacker, and a $4,000 reward was posted. Nighttime stakeouts were set up near houses that he had previously prowled, but the ransackings continued. Around 8:30 p.m. on December 12, 1975, a masked man entered the backyard of a house at 1505 West Cahuilla Avenue, near where the ransacker had been reported to frequent. When Detective William McGowan, on stakeout inside the garage, attempted to detain the man, the suspect shrieked, removed his mask, and feigned surrender after McGowan fired a warning shot. However, after jumping the fence to the house at 1501, he also pulled out a revolver with his left hand and fired once near McGowan's face, shattering his flashlight. Nearby officers rushed to aid McGowan, and the shooter was able to escape. Items collected as evidence included the flashlight, tennis shoe tracks, and dropped loot, namely blue chip stamps and a sock full of coins. DeAngelo moved to the Sacramento area in 1976, where his crimes escalated from burglary to rape. The crimes initially centered on the then unincorporated areas of Carmichael, Citrus Heights, and Rancho Cordova, east of Sacramento. His initial modus operandi was to stalk middle-class neighborhoods at night in search of women who were alone in one-story homes, usually near a school, creek, trail, or other open space that would provide a quick escape. He was seen a number of times but always successfully fled. On one occasion, he shot and seriously wounded a young pursuer. Most victims had seen or heard a prowler on their property before the attacks, and many had experienced break-ins. Police believed that the offender would conduct extensive reconnaissance in a targeted neighborhood, looking into windows and prowling in yards before selecting a home to attack. It was believed that he sometimes entered the homes of future victims to unlock windows, unload guns, and plant ligatures for later use. He frequently telephoned future victims, sometimes for months in advance, to learn their daily routines. Although D'Angelo originally targeted women alone in their homes or with children, he eventually preferred attacking couples. This change in modus operandi is believed to be a direct result of media reports, claiming he only attacked women alone in the home. His usual method was to break in through a window or sliding glass door and awaken the sleeping occupants with a flashlight, threatening them with a handgun. Victims were subsequently bound with ligatures, often shoelaces, that he found or brought with him, then blindfolded and gagged them with towels that he had ripped into strips. The female victim was usually forced to tie up her male companion before she was bound. The bindings were often so tight that the victim's hands were numb for hours after being untied. He then separated the couple, often stacking dishes on the man's back and threatening to kill everyone in the house if he heard them rattle. He would then move the woman to the living room and rape her, often again and again. A decade later, police reported that D'Angelo repeatedly said, "I hate you, Bonnie," during a 1978 rape, the 37th attack. D'Angelo sometimes spent hours in the home ransacking closets and drawers, eating food in the kitchen, drinking beer, raping the woman again, or making additional threats. Victims sometimes thought he had left the house before he jumped from the darkness. A young Sacramento couple, 21-year-old Brian Keith Maggiore, a military policeman at Mather Air Force Base, and his 20-year-old wife, Katie Lee Maggiore, were walking their dog in the Rancho Cordova area on the night of February 2, 1978, near where 5 East Area rapist attacks had occurred. The Maggiores fled after a confrontation in the street, but were chased down and shot to death. Some investigators suspected that they had been murdered by the East Area rapist because of their proximity to the other attacks' locations, and a shoelace was found nearby. The FBI announced on June 15, 2016, that it was confident that the East Area rapist had murdered the Maggiores. On June 29, 2020, D'Angelo entered a plea of guilty to these murders. Shortly after the rape committed on July 5, 1979, D'Angelo moved to Southern California and began killing his victims, first striking in Santa Barbara County in October. The attacks lasted until 1981, with a lone 1986 attack. Only the couple in the first attack survived, alerting neighbors and forcing the intruder to flee. The other victims were murdered by gunshot or bludgeoning. Since D'Angelo was not linked to these crimes for decades, he was known as the Night Stalker in the area, before being renamed the original Night Stalker after serial killer Richard Ramirez received the former nickname. On the evening of April 24, 2018, Sacramento County Sheriff's deputies arrested D'Angelo in the side yard of his Sacramento home. He was charged with 8 counts of first-degree murder with special circumstances. On May 10th, the Santa Barbara County District Attorney's Office charged D'Angelo with 4 additional counts of first-degree murder, with special circumstances. On May 10th, the Santa Barbara County District Attorney's Office charged D'Angelo with 4 additional counts of first-degree murder. D'Angelo made a confession of sorts after his arrest that cryptically referred to an inner personality named Jerry, who had forced him to commit the wave of crimes that ended abruptly in 1986. According to Sacramento County Prosecutor Thien Ho, D'Angelo said the following to himself while alone in a police interrogation room after his arrest in April 2018. "I didn't have the strength to push him out. He made me, he went with me. It was like in my head. He's a part of me. I didn't want to do those things. I pushed Jerry out and had a happy life. I did all those things. I destroyed all their lives, so now I've got to pay the price. Detectives ignored D'Angelo's initial request to speak to an attorney, later citing a legal theory that this potential Miranda violation would be justified, with the understanding that prosecutors could not use the interview against the defendant in court. D'Angelo could not be charged with rapes or burglaries, as the statute of limitations had expired for those offenses, but he was charged with 13 counts of murder and 13 counts of kidnapping. D'Angelo was arraigned in Sacramento on August 23, 2018. In November 2018, prosecutors from 6 involved counties collectively estimated that the case could cost taxpayers $20 million and last 10 years. At an April 10, 2019, court proceeding, prosecutors announced that they would seek the death penalty, and the judge ruled that cameras could be allowed inside the courtroom during the trial. On March 4, 2020, D'Angelo offered to plead guilty if the death penalty were taken off the table, which was not accepted at the time. On June 29, as part of a plea bargain to avoid the death penalty, D'Angelo pleaded guilty to 13 counts of first-degree murder and special circumstances, including murder committed during burglaries and rapes, as well as 13 counts of kidnapping. On August 21, 2020, D'Angelo received multiple consecutive life sentences without the possibility of parole. D'Angelo offered a brief apology after listening to days of pre-sentencing victim impact statements. "I've listened to all your statements, each one of them, and I'm truly sorry to everyone I've hurt." In November 2020, D'Angelo was transferred to the North Kern State Prison. As of February 2021, D'Angelo is incarcerated in protective custody at California State Prison, Corcoran,